Welcome. We are so excited that you are able to join us for our final panel session for the Courageous Leader Series. In a minute, I'm going to introduce you to our panel members for today, but first, I just want to introduce your support team that's on the call. We have Heather McDermott, who's our Senior Director of Content and Coaching, and also Lainey, who's our Content Quality and Logistics Specialist. Lainey will also be serving as concierge today. So if you run into any technical challenges, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. Both she and Heather will be keeping an eye on any comments that come through there. So we'd encourage you to use that as you see fit. We are recording this session, so if we get partway through and you realize that our panelists said something brilliant, but you forgot to write it down, no worries. After the fact, we will send that link to you for you to refer back to share out with anyone from your organization that may be interested in learning more as well. Lainey's going to go ahead and drop in the chat for us a thought organizer. If you are a person who finds it easier to focus, if you're kind of tracking along or jotting down some notes or thoughts, please feel free to pull that up as we go. As we look at the agenda for today, so you have an idea of what to expect over the next hour, I'm going to give you a quick look at where we're at in the Courageous Leader series. We are wrapping up our final panel here today, but we still have a session following this. Then I'll go ahead and introduce you to our panel members. From there, the format will be me covering a couple of concepts from the last session on finding meaning and purpose. And then we will have them answer some Q&As specific to that content. At the end, we'll have an opportunity to answer any of the questions that you have for either of the panelists. Please don't feel like you have to wait until the very end to track your questions and hope you don't forget it. Feel free to drop those in the chat at any point that they come up for you. Lainey and Heather will keep kind of a running total, and then we'll be able to ask those at the end. For those of you who've joined us before for some of our sessions, we always wrap up with a section where you can consider some next steps for your organization. If there are concepts here around meaning and purpose that you find a lot of value in or have additional questions about, we'll talk about some additional resources and next steps available to you. If you are anything like Lainey and Heather and I, before you got to this call, you may have come from a meeting or you have an inbox that has a number that's much higher than you prefer, and you still chose to log in and be with us here today. We would encourage you to just take a minute to be fully present here and kind of think through, why did you decide to show up? With everything else that you have going on, maybe it would help you to think about something that's currently happening at your organization, or maybe for you as a leader, as you're thinking about this concept of finding meaning and purpose in your work. Again, just a reminder that the thought organizer is a great way for you to really get everything out of this session as possible as you're kind of tracking along some thoughts or things that you want to consider for down the road. As you look at our Courageous Leader series, we have covered a lot of topics together. And if you are looking at this list thinking, oh, I missed a session that I was really interested in, Lainey's going to go ahead and drop the playlist. All of these have been recorded, so please feel free to go back to any topic that you have an interest in. At the end of each session, we have also developed a take-back deck or a tool that you can bring back into your teams to continue the conversation. So there'll always be a way for you to reach back out to us so we can help further that discussion as well. We are here talking about cultivating meaning and purpose. And then on November 12th, we will have our final speaker session on creating a culture of feedback that we'd love to have you join us at. Our two panelists today, just like the panelists that have attended here before, have graduated or are alumni of all three of our foundational courses. So they have all been through our community listens, where they've learned about those communication skills, our community serves, where they talk about this service mindset and behaviors to help shift work cultures from me-centric to we-centric. And both have been through our Community Transforms, which is our 3 or 6 month-long course for organizational leaders to help take all of those concepts from listens and serves and integrate them into the processes and systems and day-to-day work of organizations. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists for today. We have with us Greg Bulanow, the retired fire chief of the North Charleston Fire Department from South Carolina. And Greg also recently became a certified facilitator to lead our community listens. Greg, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Katie. I'm super excited to be here and talk with you all about this wonderful topic. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Greg. And if any of you caught my little chuckle there, I've known Greg for a couple of years now and realized I still struggle to pronounce his last name. So I'm glad that you're here and we can learn from your wisdom today. We also have with us Misty Jenks, who is an organizational psychologist and also the CEO of this Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities. Not only is she a facilitator of Listens, Serves, and Transforms, but has played an integral role in designing what the Transforms program is based on her knowledge from that organizational psychologist lens. Misty, we are incredibly excited for you to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to just be here and have this experience together.
With that, we're going to jump right into the topic. And again, for those of you who didn't attend the full session, that link is in the playlist if you want to go back and get a more in-depth understanding of some of the concepts we'll be covering today. But for you, Misty and Greg, we talked in our last session about kind of the definitions of both purpose and meaning. And purpose was more of this overarching cause or goal, kind of this larger high level. And a lot of times organizations would talk about purpose being connected to their vision or their mission. When we talk about the concept of meaning, this becomes a lot more individual and personal. It's about finding significance in the things that you're doing. And I love this line here at the bottom. We have a universal need to feel we matter and that our hard work isn't futile. So with that, I would love to open up this first question, which is just what has helped you find meaning and purpose in your role as a leader? And Greg, I'd love to start with you if that's all right.
Sure, that'd be great. I think the thing that has helped me find meaning and purpose as a leader is really to help my people find their meaning and purpose in their jobs. And I primarily did that in my role as fire chief through our strategic planning processes, and tried to really give our people a lot of input in setting the goals for our organization. And by doing that, gave them a voice and gave them an opportunity to really understand where we were headed as an organization by working to develop our mission, vision, values, and our goals. So that was a very important way, and it was a lot of fun to be involved in that and to hear their thoughts and help them together. We worked to set the direction for our organization. Another part of that was that as we grew, finding people who shared our mission, vision, and values, and bringing them on board in the organization. And we found in order to do that, that really had to start at recruitment with how we described our job so they would understand it. People have perceptions of what being a firefighter is, and it involves many other things as well. We wanted people that not only like the excitement of running emergency calls, but also wanted to be involved in community education and prevention as well. So really working to find the right people as our organization grew through recruitment and values-based hiring. And then another way we help people find meaning and purpose was through our rewards and recognition. And some of the ways that we did that was trying to find those times where our crews provided service at the frontline level that really spoke to our values. So much so that our citizens could identify compassion in the way that our people treated their loved one during an emergency. And when we would hear that, those are things that we could recognize through a variety of different ways in our rewards and recognition programs. And then finally, another way we helped our people find meaning and purpose is by providing the classes that the Chapman Foundation offers. Before I retired, we became a caring workplace partner so that our people could go through listens, they could go through serves and transforms so that they could really do a lot of work around what their own values are and really understand those and match those with the organization. And that's very deep work. That's very important work. And I loved that we were able to provide that opportunity to our members by becoming a caring workplace partner.
Greg, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love how you're touching on how you're building it into your systems, even with the interview process and formally looking for ways to recognize things that are in alignment. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Misty, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes. So when I reflected on this question, the answer really lies in my experience that I had throughout my career. I never sought positions where I was a leader. I always seemed to find them in a different way. But I remember specifically, it was the first time that I had ever been able to be in an executive director role. And I was working under a CEO though. And I had just this really negative experience with this individual, so much so that it was pretty traumatic. So I was disagreeing with a different director that did our facilities maintenance, and he was trying to charge stuff to my operating unit that I was running. And I denied those charges. And so then I got called into the CEO's office, and I remember the maintenance person just yelling at me and saying, "Why do you have to be such a B? Why can't you just get along?" And I thought, oh my goodness. All right. So that gentleman got up and left the room, and the CEO looked at me and said, "You really need to learn to get along with him if this is going to work for you." And that is just one of the defining moments in my career when I said, I am not going to do this, and I will never let this happen to anybody in my span of care. And so it was just having these interactions with leadership that I knew there was a different way. And so I wanted to go out and create that for individuals so they didn't have the same experiences that I have had. So I think that is what's led me to my current role, and really being able to work with different organizations and partners, even across the US, to change what this leadership model can look like. Because I can think back, like that is just one instance, but I have had several of them. Or I've come into several organizations and tried to flip them because they were in such a red state of as we're looking at their revenues and stuff. And it was how everyone was treated and how you had to grow them to bring the organization back. So I think it is that my leadership journey and my experiences that have really helped me find this meaning and purpose and what I'm currently doing now, and why I'm motivated every day to do the work.
Misty, thank you for being willing to share that. It's also a good reminder that I think sometimes we think of meaning and purpose as being this like deeply embedded, just always been who we are, that helps us to find that meaning, but to see how it can be shaped from our experiences and the way that we've had leaders show up in the past. It's a great reminder. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move us forward. Greg and Misty, I'm going to talk about a few data points that we had touched on in our previous call. 77% of employees believe that having a clear purpose is important, which means it's relevant. We want to be aware of it because a lot of people believe that this is critically important. However, only 28% of employees could recall their organization's vision or mission, which I think can make it challenging to really connect to purpose if you can't even remember what the organization has said their goals are. And only 30% of employees feel like their work is connected to their organization's purpose. So we're talking about a lot of people out there spending 40+ hours a week working for an organization and not seeing the connection between what they do and what the organization's purpose is. So when you think back on your organization's journey, what resonates with you about this data? And you can answer that in a variety of different ways, but maybe encourage you to think through what are some of the things that initially were going well or have been going well, and areas you might have realized, oh, we still need to do a little bit of work here. And this time, Misty, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, thank you. So with that data and looking at that, I believe those first two bullet points, the first one about 77% of employees believe that having a clear purpose is important. And then the second one there with being able to recall their organization's vision and mission. I felt like those two, especially working in the nonprofit sector, felt like they were true of most of the places that I had the opportunity to be in a leadership role. And then especially this 30%, so that bottom one is really where we needed to do better. So even though I could recite that vision statement or that mission statement because it's on the wall, it's on a piece of paper, it's on every single meeting agenda, yes, we can say it, but how do we actually live it? And how do we actually connect the individuals to that purpose? And that's the piece that's always been missing, I believe, or that we could grow in so much more, because it's having that opportunity to really let our team members know that their work matters and they're seeing the impact of it. And I think there's some people on our teams that are very blessed that have the opportunity to interact with different participants in different organizations. But then there's also some that are, stuck behind a desk, stuck kind of pushing some of the papers. So really understanding how to connect some of that work to the bigger purpose is what was missing for our organization specifically, as I look at that.
Thank you, Misty. Greg, I'll go ahead and turn it to you.
Yeah, I could really relate to what Misty said about people in the nonprofit world. And I think the same is true in public safety, that the vast majority of people want to believe that their work is important and that it matters beyond just making a living. They could probably find a higher paying job outside of public safety. So they're there because they want to do work that matters. So it's really up to us as leaders to make sure that they are feeling that and connecting with that so that we can keep them and honor those intentions that they bring to their work. So that really resonates with me. The second statistic there, only 28% of employees can recall their organization's vision or mission. That rings true to me as well. I think it is important for leaders in the organization to be very deliberate about communicating the mission, vision, and values to their people. And it starts, like I mentioned, with hiring, really trying to identify those people that can relate to that mission and vision, and then reinforce that through communication. And even in the things that we recognize as leaders, that's a very valuable communication tool, recognition. And in the fire service, we have to be very careful that we preach safety, we preach service, but sometimes in recognitions, we can reward risk taking. And that sends very mixed messages. And I think in the business world, if you're preaching your values, but you're actually recognizing and rewarding sales, that's sending very mixed messages to people as well. So there's those pitfalls that we can make, and we need to be very deliberate that our rewards and recognition align completely with our mission and vision. And I think when we do that, we're able to realign the people with the purpose. And I think they feel that, and that's very important as well. That final stat, only 30% of our employees feel their work is connected to their organization's purpose. Unfortunately, I think that can be very true as well. I think oftentimes work gets siloed, where people's day-to-day work is simply one part of a process. And even for firefighters who are out delivering hands-on service, what we found is that the majority of their work is providing medical responses. Well, they get to a medical call, they work very intensely for a few minutes on their part of it, and then the patient gets in an ambulance and they may not see them again. They go to the hospital. There's all these steps after that for that patient to fully recover. But all the firefighter sees and feels is their piece in that chain of survival. And sometimes they can feel disconnected from the outcome. So we've found we need to be very deliberate of letting them know when they were involved in saving a life. That's why they came in the fire service. And they should get to find out when they've been involved in doing something that really helps us achieve the mission and vision of our organization.
Greg, I love that example too, because sometimes helping people see their work connected to the purpose, I feel like, to your point, it's this direct tie of like, we just need to close the communication loop and let you know, here was the impact that you had and how you're helping us achieve in this space. And Misty, when you were talking about some people who have some of the behind the scenes work where they're at the desk or doing a lot of the behind the scenes paperwork, Greg, it reminded me when you talked about that power of recognition. I remember sitting at an all team call when someone said, I just want to thank the guy who works in finance because I've never missed getting a paycheck. And it was just this beautiful moment of calling out and shining the light on somebody's work that many people might take for granted if we don't take the time to recognize and appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Katie, and I'd also like to just add on to this. So both Greg and I spoke to kind of the nonprofit side because that's where our experiences lie. But I think this is extremely important in for-profit businesses too. When we're able to do this, this can really help with innovation and job satisfaction. And so really ensuring that all of those roles are connected to that higher purpose. And that purpose isn't just a product. It's what does that product do to the people's lives that it touches? And so again, I just want to make sure that we're speaking about that side too, because this is critically important for all businesses, no matter the type.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us forward and talk about the power of aligning work to your values. We spend quite a bit of time talking about values in our Transforms program. When we work in roles that resonate with our core values, it's been shown that we'll experience increased job satisfaction, motivation, overall well-being, motivation and a drive to excel, and also this sense of fulfillment, meaning, and purpose. All of these things on the slide, I feel like we could all agree we would like a little bit more of, or sounds like a great thing to have in our organizations. And so I'd love to just hear more from you. And Greg, why don't we start with you on this one? What are some of the tangible things that you've done to help your team connect more intentionally to the organization's purpose and find meaning in their work? Right. So we've talked about some of the philosophy behind why it's important. What can we as leaders do?
So I think one of the most important thing is that we connect people's work with their outcomes. And I used that example in my previous answer about medical calls, making sure that people get that, find out how that incident turned out for the patient. We found that even in fire calls, when I joined the fire service, I thought, boy, wouldn't that be exciting to be involved in saving lives and property. But the reality is when we go to a fire, the situation is never going to get better. The best we can hope for is that we make it less worse by putting out the fire and saving property. And I've experienced it where we've fought a fire, and then within a week or two, we ride by the building and find out that it was torn down due to an insurance company calculation that it wasn't worth saving. But we worked very hard there. We took some physical risk at that fire, so that can feel very dissatisfying. So one of the things we've tried to do is provide our crews with some closure on those incidents where we have a fire investigator follow up with them to let them know what they did and how their work helped save property. And even if the building ended up getting torn down, letting them know that the work they did maybe helped keep it from spreading to an adjacent property. Something along those lines where they feel like they made a difference through their hard work and the effort that they made.
Greg, I love that. And it's also this idea of not just praising the outcome, but also the elements that they did of their effort and the way that they showed up and contributed to the culture and the team. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Misty.
I think we've done a couple of things as an organization, but the very first thing that I would recommend for other organizations too would to allow our team members to explore their values. So we have an activity that we do in Transforms, but we also can put any team through it really. But it's really being able to dive into finding your own values. And so once we have our own values, we have conversations with the different leaders and we look at values and strengths and we look how those show up in the work that they're doing and allow some intentional alignment with those values and strengths. So I think that's the first thing that we can do. We also can talk about those values and explore how do they actually align to the company values then, so they can see those connection points and again, lean into them as additional projects come up, growth opportunities, recognition is another piece like Greg has mentioned several times, but if you can recognize somebody on their strengths and their values, that is extremely meaningful for them. Additional things that we've done as an organization is we are committed to being our own proof of concept. We do not ask our partners or participants to ever do anything that we do not do as an organization. So our team members' experience with that, I think, allows them to understand the potential and what we're doing beyond their roles sometimes. We also have opportunities for our team members to teach classes. And this really comes down to really seeing firsthand the changes that are happening because of the courses and the programs that we teach. With our logistics team members, they have that interaction with individuals as they're enrolling for classes. They get to see the surveys. And then with our marketing department, they get to tell the stories that are happening. So anytime we can connect them to the actual outcomes that are happening in the field, I think it allows them to continue to be able to see their meaning and their purpose in their work because they get to hear it firsthand from those participants.
It's great. And I hear kind of that common theme, Misty, both you and Greg have talked about, like, how do we help them to see the final outcome and how they are such a critical, integral part of what it is that the organization is doing. Thank you. Yeah, Greg.
One thing I wanted to add is just one of the real struggles we had in this area was with consistency. Our organization was widely dispersed. That's the nature of the fire service. You have to be spread out to cover your city. And so we had 18 different crews that worked at 12 different locations on 3 shifts. So that adds up to like 54 supervisors that were always kind of spread out. And when we had things like rewards and recognition, many people think, well, we're just doing our jobs, and they wouldn't often pass on behavior that met our mission, vision, and values because they just sort of had a stoic nature, and that's true of a lot of people in public safety and nonprofits and other places, and we really had to try and draw it out of them, and I think that hurt us with our rewards and recognition because the people that got those things felt very good, I believe, but there were others that didn't, and we knew we were missing them, and that really bothered me. And that's, I think, human nature. It'd be difficult for anyone to see somebody else recognized for something that you are consistently doing, but not being recognized for. And so that can create problems in an organization if there's that lack of consistency. So that is something that I'm really hopeful about by being a caring workplace partner, that all of our supervisors can get this training in listens. They learn how the model for providing appropriate recognition, which is so very valuable. And that's something that we tried to implement at the organizational level. And then through serves and transforms, really understanding how those rewards and recognition contribute to the overall organization, that everyone can feel good when individuals are recognized because it shows that you are part of a winning team. The whole organization is succeeding, and all those support functions, the people that do payroll, the people that fix fire trucks, that bring supplies to the stations, all of them are involved in that when our crews save a building or save a life, and that transforms class really helps show that. And I think so I'm very optimistic for our organization that we can improve on that inconsistency that we really struggled with in this area. And everybody can be involved in those recognitions. We can do it more consistently, and everyone can feel good about us achieving our mission, vision, and values.
Oh, Misty, you came off mute too.
I did. I just had one other thought as Greg was talking about. One of the things that we have done as an organization is we've also operationalized our organizational values. So what that means is we have but we identified the different behaviors that are at every level of the organization or function on what does it look like when we say you're living that value for the organization. So everyone knew then what expectations were, what really good performance looks like, and then we can recognize on the back end to help support that forward momentum. But I think it just takes the guesswork out of what does it look like to see those values in our organization, and that's really helped us too.
Great, thank you. I am going to move us forward because Lainey sent over a list of questions that have come in. So we'll just make it as far as we can in this, making sure that we respect everyone's time and get out on time. Anyone on the call who wants to add additional questions, please still feel free to send those over to Lainey and we'll make sure that we get to those as well. All right, first question. In what ways do you think organizational culture shapes our understanding of meaning and purpose?
Do you want me to take that one first?
Yeah.
Greg? Okay.
Go ahead, Misty.
I think organizational culture has a huge impact in finding meaning and purpose. Our culture drives the behaviors inside of our organization, and if they will be in alignment with our vision, mission, values. So it is critical to make sure you are being strategic and explicit about what you want your culture to be, because if you don't, there will still be one that you do not have any control over. So I think that's why everything that we do around meaning and purpose comes back to vision, mission, values, and even strengths, because it is so connected. So always have a strategy for that in an explicit way, things will be handled.
Yeah, I completely agree with Misty on that. I think it's difficult to align the culture with the mission and vision, but it is critical that you do it. If you are saying one thing and doing another, that is just a recipe for a lot of problems. And it takes strong leadership. It takes very deliberate work on mission, vision, and values and building that culture, good communication about expectations, and good leadership development at every level so that the various layers of leadership are all pulling in the same direction and saying and doing the same things.
And I'll also just add that culture isn't just set by leadership. Culture is set by the worst behavior that you tolerate. So Greg, yes, I totally support what you're saying with leadership, but I think leadership is what puts on the guardrails and realigns people that go outside of those guardrails. So it's important for leaders to have that, but we also need to focus in on those individual behaviors, because culture is the sum of all of that. And if you aren't focusing in on and correcting some of the negative, you'll never have that culture that you want to see either.
In one of these classes, and I wrote this down on a Post-it note, but I didn't write down who said it, but the quote was, "You are who you are on the very edge of your organization on your worst day."
Mm.
And I love that because it's so true. That's what will either make or break an organization. The very edge, whether they're trained and supported and have that understanding of what the mission and vision is, and are empowered to make that happen at those critical times. That is very challenging, and I think about that often in relation to building culture.
Thank you both. This next question is going to be a little bit more about how do you strategically utilize this concept of meaning and purpose? So how might you leverage meaning and purpose in order to work through a challenge within your team?
I believe meaning purpose, like I've said before, is highly tied to our values. So if we're working through an issue, and I'm assuming it's a behavioral issue, I think we can look at and explore like what values might have had us act in this way. So we can have a more of an understanding of the why or the root cause that we're trying to correct in that behavior. And then also it's easier for us then to do the forward thinking of it. So if we need to ask for a change, what might be a motivator so we can create those inspiring environments for change to happen, to allow them to see the connection in why this behavior might need to change for us. So to me, it comes back to that values connection, because we all know that our values drive our behaviors every single day. So truly understanding that allows us to reflect and move forward.
Thank you, Misty. Greg, do you have anything you want to add to that one? So I'll just share an example of that. So within, I'm in North Charleston, South Carolina. So there are 13 fire departments in Charleston County, and historically we didn't work closely together. And there was a fire in a neighboring jurisdiction back in 2007 where 9 firefighters were killed. It was obviously a horrendous situation. And one of the findings in the investigation is that the fire department should all work closer together to support each other. And that's especially important due to the growth we're experiencing in this area. That was a huge challenge for us to develop the capacity for the different fire departments to work together. There were some technical challenges, and there were some cultural challenges that were very difficult to work through as well. And I was fortunate. I got to work with just an amazing group of fire chiefs at these other departments to try and find a way for us to work together. And when it got hard, and it did, it was, whether it was technical challenges or cultural challenges or a combination of those things, what kept us focused was really the loss of those 9 firefighters, wanting to make sure that that never happened again, wanting to take care of our people, and wanting to take care of our citizens, even if that meant having to give up our preferences, the way we've always done things, the way we like to do things, in order to achieve that goal where we're doing the right thing for our people and living in accordance to our professed values. So it was an amazing experience to be part of that, and to really have to set aside our personal preferences to reach a goal that benefited the citizens of our community and the people that work for us.
Greg, I appreciate you sharing that example because I think it also helps remind us that it's not, once you've had this one common goal, everybody falls in line and we're all great and happy about it. But all of those small moments where conflict comes up or something butts up against a personal value or preference, hey, how do we bring it back to, hey, this is what we're all here for? Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think that's what shows, the values are great when they're on the wall and they look pretty, but your values are real when they cause pain. And I'm not talking about external pain. I'm talking about internal pain where you're having to do something that's really hard, because if you don't, then those values aren't going to mean a thing. So I think that's as painful as that is, you can take solace in the fact that you are working really hard to live your values.
Thank you. All right, this next one's going to require you to think of an example. So I'll try to pause long afterwards if you need more time to think. Could you share a story about someone in your span of care that had an aha moment once they connected their personal meaning and purpose to the work of the organization? And then as a result of that, did you see a change in their work? You want me to read it one more time? Okay. Could you share a story about someone in your span of care that had an aha moment once they connected their personal meaning and purpose to the work of the organization? And were you able to see a change in their work? I've never been so glad to be on the moderator side in a situation like this. If you could just think back through all the years.
I can start and let Greg have a moment to think.
Please.
Okay. So the person that came to mind first is somebody that's currently on our team. And I don't think she would mind me sharing this, but she started off in a logistics function in Michigan. Her value of being of service and taking care of people, especially those that are in her span of care. And she has this great ability, because I believe it's her C, conscientious, all about the detailed tendency to be like, these are my people. And so through just identifying her strengths and her gifts and how she always cares for the individuals, we've been able to grow her into a people and culture role. So that's typically an HR type of function. And so those moments of when she went above and beyond to take care of those individuals and calling them out and recognizing them, I think it gave her the confidence, the motivation to continue to evolve into this space and just really have this, these are my people and I'm going to take care of them. And that's exactly what I want for someone leading the people and culture function inside of this organization. So I remember her saying to me, I didn't think I was a leader until you said this to me. And ever since that day, I have just seen her blossom and take off and do not having to check with me on anything, but just go and get it done. And I can still picture the space where she said, it was that moment that you said that to me.
Oh, these are the fun questions. We get to bring up all the good memories, right? Greg, I'll give you a chance to answer, and then Michelle, I see your hand up. So when Greg's done, we'll go ahead and have you ask your question. Go ahead, Greg.
A few examples sprang to mind, but when Misty mentioned DISC, I thought of one particular person who had strong D tendencies, and very early in his career, he was given the label angry man, and I think those labels can be very damaging when they stick as long as they do. And what I realized with taking Our Community Listens and sending other members of our department through it is that within the fire service, I don't think we valued what D's brought to the organization as much as we should have. Within the fire service, you get put into a station. You have to work 24-hour shifts with a couple other people, and we really prize kind of you got to be able to get along with people. And so if somebody is very outspoken, like somebody with D tendencies may tend to be, they get sort of labeled as a problem. And what we lose when we do that is their perspective to really call out issues that we may be having just because we just want to get along and just kind of get through the day or through the shift or through the meeting. And we're not really dealing with things that would make us better, either as a small unit or even as an organization. And I think once we recognize that this particular person with D tendencies, who was labeled angry man, I started to see them differently and started to see they're not angry. They are passionate about wanting to make this organization better. And they are calling out the issues that need to be called out. And eventually they went through promotional processes and became one of our shift commanders and really added so much value to our organization and to our staff meetings, just by being willing to call things out and for us to really understand that we should listen to this person. They're not angry, they're passionate, they care.
I love this. I just keep wanting to give more and more examples in this space. And for those of you who have not taken listens, we do use a behavioral assessment where it really helps us to understand that there are kind of 4 different ways that people tend to communicate naturally with different needs and fears. And to Greg's point, it's a beautiful way for team members to start to look at how do we understand each other and appreciate each other a little bit differently. Thank you very much, Greg. Michelle, I did see your chat back that it wasn't necessarily a question, but I would still love to invite you off mute for you to share your example if you're in a space where you can do that.
Yeah, I just can't turn the camera on because there's kids walking around and they have very strict privacy rules for the kids where I volunteer.
Absolutely fine.
So my example was when I was restarting a volunteer organization in Delaware for military spouses, I had this one woman who was mid-20s, relatively new to the military, really, really, really shy, like almost cripplingly shy, but had her husband, of course, being the polar opposite, had recommended she come and talk to me and see how she might be able to get involved because he grew up in a military family, so he knew the environment, but she was new and it's a shock. So she really wanted to help. She had grown up like volunteering and doing other stuff, but in her really small town in Georgia, I think, somewhere down south. She had a really thick Southern accent. But was really uncomfortable in new people and new situations. So I asked her if she would be willing to write an email every week, just with the information that I got sent as the commander spouse about what was going on. Like I could send the information to her, she could put it together into, a paragraph and just send it out. And that would be a huge help to me and very useful for the group. And so she agreed to do that. And then after a little bit, she asked if she could expand it into a newsletter, like a digital newsletter. And I said, please go on. And then she started moving into, well, what if I go to some of these events for these much younger people, because she's 20 years younger than I am, for the younger airmen and the single airmen, and just, talk to them and tell them about what's available. And I was, again, go on. And it was just really great to see her blossom like that and really like take that role. And they have since PCS, they've moved to Yokota base, the Yokota in Japan. And she is already running that spouse's Facebook page, and she's showing up in all these different pictures where she's got shirts about like Air Force community and how to reach out and all this kind of stuff. And it was amazing to see this very, very shy woman just blossom. So that was my story.
Michelle, thank you for sharing that. And what a beautiful example of this idea of, I want you to find your natural gifts and skill sets and how they can fit in what we're doing. And that level of security and seeing your gifts be valued and appreciated really can help people to branch out. Thank you. Misty and Greg, I'm so excited to hear your answer to this one. How do you know that this work is working? With all the intentionality that you as leaders are putting into helping people find their meaning and purpose, how do you know that it's working?
I feel like I keep going first, but maybe it's my deep behavioral tendency there. I'll kick us off on this one too. I think it comes down to the little moments that I have with our team members. A lot of our team members have came out of those broken environments just like I did. And so just today I got a boss's day card and it said in there, you know, thank you for being the leader that you are. I will never work at another place. And I think it's those moments that I see people going home happy. I hear them having conversations, and it is just, it's fun. One of our values is fun. And I get to see that and hear it every day from our team members.
Thank you, Misty.
So for me, and I touched on this earlier, when our citizens name our values back to us by witnessing the behavior of our frontline people, that is incredibly encouraging. When somebody says your crew came to help my husband and they were so compassionate, or your crews came to help my mom and they treated her just like a member of their own family. That's the gold standard. And when I hear those things, either through survey responses or cards or letters, those are incredibly encouraging to me, because I know our people are, I'm so proud of them. And I know they are finding meaning and purpose in their work in order to provide that level of service. It gives me the opportunity to thank them and recognize them and hold them up as an example and a win for our organization when we achieve those things. And they happen all the time. And they were incredibly encouraging to me. One thing that I'm very excited about with our partnership with the Chapman Foundation to Becoming a Caring Workplace is that I know there's more metrics there as well as part of that process. And so I'm encouraged that we'll have the capacity in the future to have those and to be able to demonstrate that in a variety of different ways beyond that anecdotal feedback that we got on a regular basis.
I would love to just add on there. So Greg, I love that I took the individual, you took the community approach. I also thought about when you were saying that there's also like the intermediate level of when I am hearing things happen from other leaders in our organization. So just because I'm there or I'm not, it's still happening. And that to me is the best thing about leadership, and where I feel like I've had successes is when things are happening in my absence, that we've really made that impact. So I think there's the whole spectrum there that we can look at.
Misty and Greg, thank you so much for being willing to field all of our questions. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to this next slide just to make sure that we wrap up on time. Lainey, if you don't mind putting in the chat Misty's email address. Greg, if you want to put your email address in there as well, if you're open to any follow-up, if people would like to have some further discussion. For those of you who've been following along in the series, this slide is probably starting to look very familiar. But we're looking at it today through that lens of meaning and purpose. And so when we look at the 3 foundational programs that we talk about, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we look at this topic of meaning and purpose through me. How do we help our leaders to have an internal understanding of the things that they find meaningful? What gives them a sense of purpose? How do we help to equip them with an understanding of their values so that they know how that's shaping the way that they see their work? There's the focus on we. How do we then take that into our teams where we can really start to appreciate other people's alignment with meaning and purpose and doing those recognition components that Greg is talking about, and bringing it to the us level. And that goes to some of the examples that Greg and Misty gave of how are we systematically putting this into our processes within onboarding? How are we having a systematic approach to recognition where we're making sure that we are shining the light on everyone throughout the organization in a way that is consistent and raising up the behaviors and values that we want to see more of? Our next steps, there's always the opportunity to complete a survey at the end of these with an option to be contacted if you want some additional follow-up. If you're interested in bringing any trainings to your team around meaning and purpose, or would like to present some information to your leaders around what that could look like, please reach out and let us know. And again, we would love to have you join us for the final session of the Courageous Leader series that will be held on November 12th, where we talk about how do we create a culture of feedback. With that, we are wrapped up for the day. Misty and Greg, any final thoughts for the group before we go?
I would just say, I think this is a really important topic. So it's one of the places as leaders, we can have some of the biggest impact for our team members, but it is only one of the pieces of the puzzle. So it's a great place to start, but there's other things, as Greg has been saying, that reinforce these, like recognition and celebration. So understanding it is important.
Thank you, Misty. Greg, any final thoughts?
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking with all of you, answering questions, and being a part of this great conversation. Thank you.
Wonderful. With that, everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on November 12th. Bye, everyone.